Given the sheer volume of games that are confirmed to be coming out in the future, it goes without saying that fans of all genres have at least something to look forward to. And when it comes to horror games, that's quite a bit. Whether it's indie titles or AAA blockbuster releases, games with zombies or games with less traditional scares, there's quite a bit coming out in 2020 and beyond that we're looking forward to. So in this feature, we'll be listing 20 such games. Resident Evil 3. Everyone's confidence in both Capcom and Resident Evil is sky high right now, and for very good reason. Given how good Resident Evil 2 was, the prospect of a similar remake of Resident Evil 3 sounds incredibly exciting, and from everything we've seen of it so far, there's every reason to suspect that it will live up to expectations. Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 would have been a game that many would be looking forward to even if it were just a simple sequel that just does more of the same. But the fact that it's trying something really interesting and some new things makes it one of the most exciting upcoming games of this year. Its choice-driven story and its reactive world can elevate it to great heights. Dead Island 2. Dead Island 2 has been appearing in games we're looking forward to lists for years. Originally announced all the way back in 2014, the game has been delayed multiple times, and even changed development studios quite a few times as well. Last we heard, Dead Island 2's development had been handed to Dambuster Studios, developers of Homefront: The Revolution, while there's no word on when the game will be out either. The Last of Us Part 2. Naughty Dog struck gold with The Last of Us. Under usual circumstances, we would remain doubtful of whether a sequel would be capable of coming close to that level of excellence, much less topping it. But if there's one studio in this industry who can pull that off, it's definitely Naughty Dog. And surely, based on everything we've seen of The Last of Us Part 2 so far, it looks extremely promising. Intense, polished, and building on the strengths of its predecessor, this just might be one of the most exciting releases of the year. Little Nightmares 2. Of all the indie gems we've played in recent years, Little Nightmares is one of those that keeps coming back up in our memories. The horror puzzle adventure was a great blend of atmosphere and mechanics, of artistic flair and palpable tension. With its upcoming sequel, they're promising what every sequel should, more, but better. We haven't seen much of Little Nightmares 2 yet, but if it can do what its predecessor did and hopefully do it a bit better, it'll be one to keep an eye on for sure. Sons of the Forest. End Night Games' survival title, The Forest, was in early access for 4 years before its full launch in 2018. But as it turned out, it was well worth the wait. The Forest is one of the best survival games in recent years, with one of its defining features being its uneasy tone and creepy horror vibes, something that its sequel, Sons of the Forest, is seemingly going to crank up to 11. We know very little about the game, with not much available besides its reveal trailer from 2019's The Game Awards, but if it can maintain its predecessor's level of quality and deliver the kind of scares its trailer promises, well, we're in. BENDY and the Dark Revival. BENDY and the Ink Machine was by no means among the most high-profile releases of its year when it came out, but as those who have played it will tell you, it was still a solid game with decent scares, great art, and enjoyable puzzle gameplay. Its sequel, BENDY and the Dark Revival, is looking to provide an experience in the same vein, and though there's still plenty about it we don't yet know, the prospect of another BENDY title with improvements made to its formula is definitely an intriguing one. Rainbow Six Quarantine. Rainbow Six Quarantine won't exactly be a horror title, and the focus will, at the end of the day, probably be first and foremost on action, like conventional military shooters. With that said, the horror vibes this game is giving off are very interesting, and we're curious to see how far Ubisoft goes with that. More horror-infused gameplay would definitely fit with the game's PvE nature, and frankly, it would help it offer an experience that's a bit different from what one usually expects to see in Rainbow Six. The Dark Pictures' Little Hope. Supermassive Games and Bandai Namco kicked off their interactive horror anthology series The Dark Pictures in 2019 with Man of Medan, a game that was very much cut from the same cloth as 2014's Until Dawn. It wasn't nearly as good though, while the next game in the series, Little Hope, is one we know next to nothing about just yet. So hopefully Supermassive will be able to deliver something that can match what Until Dawn did. GHOSTWIRE Tokyo. Tango Gameworks have been silent since The Evil Within 2 came out in 2017, but they did announce their next project at E3 2019, GHOSTWIRE Tokyo. Very little is known about the game beyond its central conceit of mysterious disappearances in Tokyo, while the game's creative director Ikumi Nakamura also left Tango last year. But given the studio's track record, we cannot help but be optimistic. CARRION. CARRION is perhaps more unique than most games on this list, because it literally turns the tables. In this game, which the developers describe as a reverse horror game, players take control of a shapeless, horrific creature that breaks out of its cage and then stalks, hunts, and consumes the people who imprisoned him. It's a fascinating premise, and if the game can properly provide that creepy tone and power fantasy gameplay trip that its premise teases, it'll be one hell of an experience. System Shock. The palpable atmosphere and uneasy horror tone of the first System Shock was a revolution for its time, and the game continues to have an impact on releases even to this day. Soon, Night Dive Studios will be taking a dive back into the past and reimagining it for the modern age. The System Shock remake has a lot to live up to. Here's hoping it properly honors the legacy of the game that it's based on. System Shock 3. System Shock won't just be looking at the past in coming years, it'll also be marching on into the future. While Night Dive Studios are working on the aforementioned remake, Warren Spector and his team at Otherside Entertainment are working on System Shock 3. Other than the fact that it exists, we know very little about the sequel, but thanks to the pedigree of its excellent predecessors and of Warren Spector, this one is worth keeping an eye on. UNHOLY. UNHOLY immediately pulled us in the second we saw it because of how fascinating its setting is. It takes place on a dying planet, in which the last remnants of civilization have banded together in a last decaying city. This city, however, is crumbling under the weight of oppressive authorities and casteism, of a deadly plague that's slowly wiping out the civilization, and beasts that roam the streets at night and bring threats of their own. Against this backdrop, UNHOLY puts the players in the shoes of a woman looking for her abducted child in first-person stealth and horror gameplay. It's a premise with a lot of promise, so here's hoping the developers can do justice to that and produce something incredible. Scorn. If you're into games that are about unlocking environments that are puzzles in and of themselves gradually through exploration, Scorn might appeal to your tastes. What makes Scorn especially interesting, though, is its promise of unsettling environmental horror, while much also depends on how much mechanical depth the game offers. For now, we're definitely intrigued, so we're hoping to learn a lot more about the game soon. Zombie Army 4 Dead War. Zombie Army 4 Dead War isn't going to be a horror game by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're craving some good zombie-slaying action, chances are this game will do more than enough to whet your appetite. Developed by Rebellion of Sniper Elite fame, Zombie Army 4's co-op action is looking like it'll provide a healthy dose of mindless fun, so here's hoping it doesn't disappoint. Paranoid. We're all suckers for a good psychological horror game because of how rarely one of them turns up. Madmind Studios' Paranoid is looking like a contender, though. It seems to be focused on more psychological scares than the more conventional stuff, while it also seems like it's going to be quite story-driven, which is an intriguing prospect. Here's hoping we get to see more of it not long from now. Succubus. Madmind Studios are a busy bunch. Alongside Paranoid, they're also working on Succubus, which really couldn't be a more different kind of horror if it tried. Succubus will see players taking control of a wild and powerful demonic priestess, and rampaging through enemies with her unique abilities. It has the potential to be an interesting experience, so we're definitely interested in learning more about it. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. The Walking Dead as a property has seen games trying various different things, from the graphic adventure Telltale's The Walking Dead series to the multiplayer-centric Overkill's The Walking Dead. Skydance Interactive's The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners is once again trying something different with a promise of VR-only experiences and some interesting choice mechanics and physics-based combat. Whether or not it can do justice to those promises remains to be seen, but hey, we're definitely curious. Remothered Broken Porcelain. 2018's Remothered Tormented Isles is an unpolished but promising survival horror experience, which developer Stormmind Games will be following up on with Remothered Broken Porcelain sometime this year. And the improvements they're promising sounds exciting, Improved stealth, deeper survival mechanics, more intense survival horror, better storytelling. Well, Remothered Broken Porcelain has the potential to be the surprise hit of the year. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.